Почитувани гости, набргу следува вториот панел. Ги поканувам говорниците и гостите.
I invite the speakers and the guests to come to conference room 1. We'll get started in 5 minutes.
Сашка,
Микрофон.
Почитувани
Dear attendees, welcome to panel 2 entitled Capital Infrastructural Projects for Better Quality of Livelihood and Cultural Development in Conditions of Crisis. My name is Sashka Brlic, and I will lead you through this panel discussion where we will underscore the significance of capital infrastructural projects to create better living conditions for our population, regional interconnection, prosperity of the country, certainly with the potential importance of education and cultural development, and finally, unification of various cultures of our country. Our today's guests in this panel are Professor Goran Markovski, who is a dean at the Civil Engineering Faculty, Mr. Nasser Nureddini, Minister of Environment and Physical Planning, Ms. Bisera Kostadinovska-Stojčevska, Minister of Culture, Mr. Jeton Shakiri, Minister of Education and Science, Mr. Blagoj Bočvarski, Minister of Transport and Communications, and Mr. Eyüp Rustemi, Director of the Public Enterprise for State Roads. Sorry. The COVID pandemic affected the educational process to a great extent. Teaching took place remotely through a system that was faced by both students and teachers for the first time ever. This chapter is behind us. The Ministry of Education and Science has managed to bring back students in regular teaching and in parallel to undertake measures and activities for the promotion and reform of education in our country. In 2022, the Ministry of Education and Science implemented almost all the goals set from its work program at a much greater pace. New projects are being announced. Mr. Minister of Education, what were the priorities of your ministry in the previous period, and what are the plans for this 2023? Thank you, Ms. Sashka. I'll address in Albanian. Dear Deputy Prime Minister, dear colleagues, panelists and ministers, dear Minister, dear Dean of the Civil Engineering Faculty, dear ambassadors, dear representatives of local institutions, mayors, and all the other guests joining us here today. Any area has its own gravity and importance, however, it also faces challenges and problems. However, education is one of the most specific areas, taking into account the saying that it is a very important developmental matter and live matter that should be adjusted to all the developments taking place in society while adjusting to the achievements in international standards and adapting to the negative phenomena that most gravely affect education, among which political influences and so forth. The year behind us was a year of challenges, and I would say also in the educational process, because we started this process with the pandemic, then we continued with the trade union in education and the other challenges in the course of the educational process regarding the last cyber attacks taking place. And from these challenges and battles, we identified the priorities that would be as follows. The most important one is the work with the new curricula. Certainly, these curricula are in line with the standards imposed by the reform in primary education, and outcomes expected from this primary education reform that is still underway. And we established another priority to move on with the secondary education law after so many years, and the new law on vocational education and training as a continuation of the reform in primary education. At the same time, in order to implement the next important goal in our reform, we identified the priority to motivate the teaching staff that, as we could see, though we were in an energetic crisis, we put our best efforts to motivate their work, including the element of salaries. Nevertheless, in addition to motivating them by increasing their wages, we implemented a number of training events through the Bureau for Development of Education as an important institution that affects both their motivation and preparation. The concept of inclusivity and inclusion that is also challenging but successful as well, since we covered all teaching process participants. It's important to continue with student standard, then scientific research, and so on and so forth. I'll do my best to briefly underscore that capital investment was also a priority of ours, and we are different as an institution from the others with a high level of capital investment implementation, where we had 3 new school buildings built for primary education, and also activities are underway in 3 other school buildings. A number of schools were reconstructed in the course of 2022 and will follow the same path this year as well, to reconstruct 30 additional schools in our country. Also, this year, we've envisaged to increase the funds in the amount of 90% in the infrastructure, where we wish to create better conditions for the Mother Teresa University, and capital investment will continue in the institutions important in higher education and higher education facilities, including the information technology faculty Finki, where after some period, working activities will be initiated to create better conditions for Finki, and also physical education faculty, building construction. Also for 2023, together with the World Bank project, in 118 schools across the country, we wish to provide better conditions within school buildings while making them accessible to all the students. This is an important element to have an efficient educational process across primary and secondary schools in our country. For the first time, we increased the number of the scholarships for socially vulnerable groups. 300 additional scholarships will be assigned, and for me, this is a significant element for people working in 2022, starting from primary, secondary education, and will continue in higher education for teachers and students and standard of living of students. And I wish to wrap up by saying that all of this planning we are doing for 2023 cannot be implemented without the collaboration of the government, local institutions, mayors, and school principals, without the teaching staff and personnel in the school. In terms of the triangle that I keep mentioning, including all the participants in the educational process. Thank you. Dear Mr. Minister Shakiri, you've mentioned all the aspects in terms of what's happening at the ministry, the daily activities. You announced major investment in infrastructure, modifications to plans and programs and curricula. However, the most important link in the entire educational process, we know that teachers and teachers market is the most important. What is your ministry undertaking to increase the dignity of teachers in our education? Can you hear me? Part of the first question, I said that an important element in the educational process is the teaching staff. In the period 2020 we faced difficulties to handle the challenge of demands submitted to us as a ministry for higher wages of all people involved in primary and secondary education as workers. With the assistance of the government, though we all know that it wasn't an easy year, it was a challenging year full of crisis, and they also have drawn certain financial repercussions. And but through the support of the government, we made a good step to increase the salaries in both primary and secondary education of 15%. That we accomplished in 2022, but once again, as a government and myself as a minister, in 2023, we'll strive for better conditions of all people involved in primary and secondary education within a period of a number of changes, in addition to salaries being part of the motivation of teaching staff, but not the most important element. I think that good conditions in primary and secondary schools are also another motivation for the teaching staff, and it's an important priority for us as well. And something that I didn't mention is the fact that more than 100 schools in all the municipalities contain new laboratories, something that is in line with the new concept of education. And those laboratories are not only for the students, but also the teachers involved in the instruction process. As an important element in terms of motivation of teaching staff, in addition to creating better conditions in terms of their remuneration and primary schools condition, we wish to optimize the network of primary schools where we are always saying that this optimization does not mean that we will have fewer teachers. This means that we will have better schools with students who will accomplish their potential and be more competitive. And finally, I think that the teaching staff are one of the major tools in the educational process, and every plan of ours, every decision of ours to be implemented more successfully will have to be done through the collaboration with the teaching staff. And in addition to all of those elements, we will never stop with training events and all the other events that would motivate teaching staff, because they're also very important for the educational process. Thank you. Just like in life, the same way in culture, they're waiting for crisis times to show themselves in the best possible light and play their best role. In the era of world health crisis, they were our shelter. We were alone but not lonely. Unfortunately, upon pandemic, the energy and economic crisis followed, deepened by the Ukraine crisis. If the pandemic imposed a new lifestyle, then these crises require alternative ways of investment. Somebody might ask, is it cost effective in such times to invest in culture, or is it considered luxury? Ms. Stoichevska, you as a Minister of Culture definitely do not have this type of dilemma. Thank you for this question. If we know that in most crisis times throughout history, greatest artwork has been created, and if we know that the most The safest immovable asset is definitely artwork. Definitely, this is in support of culture. It is our investment in our basis, in our foundation, and in combination with our awareness of its importance, its role, both social and any other roles that culture plays, the benefits of culture can be measured not only through economic benefits, but we need to be cautious and invest very shrewdly and cautiously, because for culture it's not a capital investment to build a theater whose foundations are underwater. For culture, it's not a capital investment to raise a monument that will not be named. If this transition travesty is actually is not investment in culture, which means deformation of our own culture that is in fact the foundation of who we are. Therefore, I'll reiterate that we will have to invest very cautiously in culture. If we know that Milchin, Todorka, Shishkov, Geshovsky and Sabina didn't need costly scenographies and costumographies to create their greatest work, we will say that for them the stage meant life, and also the stage deserved respect. Did Kliment Ohridsky, Cyril and Methodius, Partenis Zogravsky, Miladinovci, Perlichev, Misirkov, Ratsin need capital investment to have capital work? Without them, we wouldn't have a language. The churches and monasteries were capital investment for the church. No, but they are a wealth for us that needs to be preserved. Did Lichinovsky, Martinovsky, Kondovsky, Mazev, Penushlisky, Korubin, Chemirsky need capital edifices for their timeless artwork, whose work deserves visibility, worth visibility. Therefore, the capital investment in culture is to build space with love where our yesterday, today, and tomorrow will live forever. We need to preserve them from good times and bad times, the foundation of edifices that will witness our identity, our special history, to preserve the decade old vaults of our culture, because they're witnessing what we were and what we will be. We are restoring the angel from Kurbinovo, the St. George Circle. We digitalized millions of records for the Institute of Macedonian Language. We rehabilitate and reconstruct the national cultural facilities. We are building theaters across the country. We are opening Cultural and Information Center and returning the stolen cultural heritage at home. Also, we became part of cultural roots of the Council of Europe. The obtaining of this certificate is not a guarantee of quality and assurance, but it's an assurance of our shared wealth through our national cultural values to enrich the colorfulness of the identity card in Europe. In Davos, we became a part of the alliance of Baukultur to network the collaboration of both public and private sector. And in that context, the 60th anniversary of the disastrous earthquake in Skopje, we need to release Skopje from the styrofoam and tackiness of Skopje 2014, and we make our Skopje the seat of European culture. And one more thing, I'm very proud that as a Minister of Culture, in such unseen times, cultural workers have dignified salaries. In fact, as I said 1 year ago, at the beginning of my mandate, was that the focus of this government is in fact to invest in living culture. I believe that the winning combination is the investment in capital investment and in human capital that have to go hand in hand. And therefore, yes, culture is costly, but the lack of culture is even costlier. Thank you.
In your statement regarding the first question, you mentioned that this year we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of the catastrophic earthquake in Skopje, and it's about time to pay tribute to all the dead people as a result of this earthquake. Also, this year we will have other anniversaries, such as the 100th anniversary of the birth of Ato Shopov. Yes, this year is dedicated to the extraordinary Ato Shopov, and we are celebrating starting on the 21st of March in Paris in the UNESCO headquarters, since Ato Shopov is part of the UNESCO heritage. This year is a celebration of 120 years of the Ilinden uprising, 100 of Gocedelchev's death, Krste Misirkov's publication, celebration, and the institute that has the name of him. We also celebrate 80 years of the death of Kosta Racin, 120 years and 50 years of the death of Nikola Martinovsky, 80 years from the first class in Macedonian language, 80 years from the first Macedonian Ethnom Assembly, and the same amount of years for the Ethnom Assembly, and 30 years of our PR as an independent country in the UN. These are just some of the events that we need to celebrate this year. This does not mean they're the only ones. We are mentioning only what we say, that the culture is something that we invest in the future and what we need to preserve for the future. Thank you, Minister. From your addressing, you said that this year is going to be your year with many events and many celebrations and big promotion of our country throughout the outside of our borders. We're going to continue with the Minister of Environment. This is my ministry. Environment, we as a country strive towards achieving the strategic global goals for the green agenda and for the environmental standards, which requires institutional structure, horizontal and multi-sectoral coordination and cooperation, monitoring and applying the technologies. But unfortunately, in the 21st century, we're still facing the lack of quality drinking water for our population, provision and treatment of wastewater and their processing, and some other issues that we're facing with regards to the waste treatment, regional waste treatment, where we need to have system of regular economy, circular economy. Minister Nureddini, if you take into account that in the past period we had a lot of challenges, including the pandemic, economic crisis, energy crisis, where part of the finances from the central budget were allocated for the economy and the social vulnerable groups, you have mentioned, you have shown a great skill in provision of finances with significant number of projects in the environment area, which were not for a very long time being established in our society. Therefore, I would like to hear your discussion. What kind of projects are we talking about, and why we can say that this will be a year of possibilities for your sector? I will continue in Albanian. Dear colleagues, dear present guests, thank you for the question. Environment in our country in the past has not been a priority for the government up to date, I can say. When we're discussing about environment and the green agenda, these are ideas to have a sustainable future. Unfortunately, the world has faced economy and financial crisis, and we needed to support the businesses of the local population and the possibilities, opportunities for the citizens. When we are talking about the EU has set up several issues that we need to tackle, several challenges for us, and we need to harmonize with these. Preparation of any project is a success for us. We have mentioned that last year we had some successes with regards to wastewater treatment, for example, but this is not the topic for today. Regarding the EU and what was requested from us as a country is that in the process, for example, for the sewage network system in Kičevo, establishment of this system, we needed to have a wastewater treatment plant as well. The realization of or implementation of which project was supposed to be completed in June, and then we will have new wastewater treatment plant in Tetovo, of course, in cooperation with the municipality of Tetovo, because the municipalities are the main stakeholders here. This needs to finish in March this year. And we certainly hope for construction of the new landfill for the eastern region. Why are these projects delayed? Because we have EU funding for them, and these are finances from the taxpayers of the EU citizens. And we cannot use this money if we have not prepared everything in advance in order to have successful implementation of the works. Of course, for the ministry, I can say that we have already adopted 6 laws that are going to assist us in the waste treatment. We had a loan from the European EBRD at the amount of 56 million euros, 9 million euros from the francs from the European Development Bank, and with these finances we are going to build regional landfills for the other cities or towns in the countries. This will enable us to have a recycling of the collection and recycling of the waste. This should not be done only in words. This should be done in action as well. This is a process that already has started. We have provided the finances and we need to start with the implementation. One of the bigger projects is the wastewater treatment plant in Skopje with the assistance of the EBRD, which project is supported by a grant of 126 million euro and about 70 million euro grant. This is one of the infrastructural objects that our capital needs and our country needs. We have also had another loan from the EBRD for supporting the municipalities and local self-government units with regards to the sewage networks and provision of drinking water, of potable water. This is something that we are not supposed to discuss nowadays. Drinking water should not be something to discuss nowadays. We as a ministry are undertaking all the necessary activities to deal with these projects. Thank you for the answering of the question. We are going to go to the treatment of wastewater, IPA funding and similar. We need to include the local self-government units in these projects. How are the local self-government units ready, and are the other national institutions ready to support this kind of projects? Because the successful implementation of these projects is, of course, preconditioned by the support of all the institutions. I'm going to continue in Macedonian. If I make any mistakes, please forgive me. The cooperation with the local government units is necessary. Without the cooperation, we cannot start anything. Legally, we do not have this opportunity. If we know that there is some problem somewhere and there is no potable or drinking water or some problem with the landfills, we certainly have to cooperate with the local self-government units. They are institutions, if I can call them so, that are developing all the documentation, and we're sort of supervisor. We're providing the finances, we're proposing policies and laws. But unfortunately, we cannot say that the amount of wastewater, the amount of drinking water that is needed, that this is a decision that needs to be brought by the local self-governments. We need to cooperate with all the municipalities, and we have not rejected any project that was prepared in a diligent and due way. So this is very important. When they will request for a financial support by the national authorities, and when we say that the budget from the EU and the budget from the citizens of our country is going to be used for this project, this is a prerequisite in order to have good project, and it is obligatory to have cooperation with all the municipalities. And I consider that we as a government have shown that we are open to have cooperation with all the municipalities, regardless of which political party the mayor of this municipality is. Thank you, Minister Nureddini. They say that the quality of a country is seen in the infrastructure of a country. The more developed infrastructure, the better development and growth way for the country. 2020 was a very difficult year, first with the pandemic, then economic and energy crisis, and this affected the construction sector. But in conditions like this, you, distinguished Mr. Boczwarski, you have shown that you have big capital investments, and you are also presenting some investments for the forthcoming period. What has been the mark for the past period for you as a ministry? What was the mark for 2022? Thank you for the question. Distinguished present guests, dear colleagues, ministers, MPs, mayors, professors, all of you present here today at this panel. I have to mention that last year, when we have been developing the plans, we had serious and strong agenda for which we have decided we need to stick to, and thus show that the country can jump forward with regards to the capital investments and with regard to what the country is building for the most important needs of the citizens, regardless of whether it's a road infrastructure or a railway or communal infrastructure. Each project and each donor invested in the infrastructure means additional growth and development of the country. When speaking as from today's perspective, we see the figures for the past and the most crisis year, that we did not expect to have this effect. We can say that we can, to a certain amount, be pleased. Since the independence of Macedonia, we have had a big development. We have discussed at this kind of panels when we will reach the level of 250 or 300 million euros for capital investments. I can say today that in the last 2 years we have had the best realization or implementation of this kind of projects. These are finances invested in projects that the citizens can see. They can see the increased growth and development, and we are going to continue with this dynamics this year as well. I have to stress that only 2022, last year, we managed to construct 2 new express roads in the same year, calendar year. This is very important. They are 2 very important directions. Road infrastructure. One is from Štip. This was in the eastern part of the country, and the traffic was improved, and the express road Štip-Kočani, which was put into function in December last year, and we can see the development and the growth. Apart from these two road infrastructures, we can see development of the overall region there. We have finished the Pletvar road section, Corridor 8. We were working on Corridor Kumanovo-Stracin. We have finished with the rehabilitation of this part. Kriva Palanka, Devebair are underway. We have finished Mavrovianovi-Žirovnica section and other sections. Bitola-Medžitlia connection with the border crossing, Skopje-Blace, and we are staying focused on the rehabilitation of the road infrastructure in the country. When we are talking about the railway infrastructure, last year we also had the most successful year since we started with the most important and the biggest infrastructure project in the railway, that is Corridor 8, Kumanovo to Kriva Palanka in 2 sections. And nowadays we are working on this railway section. I also have to mention that in the part of the construction of social homes, part of them have been already constructed. 864 apartments or houses are under construction. Last year we have managed to award 4 different buildings in 4 different cities in the country, which solved the housing for about 200 families in our country. I have to mention one other project for local roads. We have had about 130 local roads constructed up to last year. About 60 more are under construction. We are giving contribution to the local infrastructure construction in order to assist the municipalities and the citizens where the concentration of the movement of people is the most frequent. And as last, the pipeline, the gas pipeline Negotino-Kavadarci-Prilep-Bitola is a very important magistral pipeline, gas pipeline, which we finished last year. And this year we are going to finalize the construction works for the pipeline towards Gostivar. This is not about politics. We're talking about facts, numbers, figures, and they're always on the side of the ones that are speaking the truth. I'm going to say we're not going to stop here. We are going to overcome the challenges. We are going to supplement what was missed in the past, and we are going to continue with our work with very strong tempo. And I'm certain that we're going to be able to face the biggest challenges that are ahead of us. Thank you.
You've listed grandiose projects of all aspects. The Ministry of Transport and Communication is working on them. These are capital projects that are multi-year ones. I suppose that you are moving on at the same pace, even greater pace in the course of 2023 and further, because our country and the citizens are expecting that from you. Yes, we are ready and willing, as I said in my answer to the first part of the question. The country is ready to implement a high level of capital investment compared to 5 or 6 years ago. But what we accomplished in 2022, I'm convinced, together with our public enterprises in the country, public enterprise for state roads and public enterprise for infrastructure and railroads, that entered the implementation of a capital project. I'm convinced this year we'll see the exceeded last year, because the budget contains 800 million euro for capital projects, and more than 300,000 euro are in the Department of Transport and Communications. And I can say that this year we are expecting for the completion of the Kičevo-Ohrid road, the pipeline from Skopje to Tetovo to Gostivar. The first phase of the motorway Skopje-Blace should be completed, and a call should be open for the second phase of Skopje-Blace road. Then the railroad corridor 8 will continue, and the connection with the Republic of Bulgaria. I can underline that this year we will place a call for contractors in the third phase of the railroad connection with Bulgaria, which is the largest railroad in the country, amounting to more than 400 million euro. And we are prepared to implement this multi-year capital project as well. The construction of social housing will continue in this year as well at the same pace, certainly. Then housing will be provided for socially vulnerable groups in the Debar and in Budel, which is the largest building in Skopje, with about 306 units, where our fellow citizens will be accommodated. Veles, Pekčevo, Kočani are seeing the construction of residential buildings this year, and then support for local environments and areas is continuing through the local road construction. We are providing new 80 local roads in a number of municipalities in the country, and I wish to repeat the appeal of my colleague Nureddini. We are expecting good quality, well corroborated and quick projects for the implementation of local roads by municipalities to be able to get into further procedure and implement these projects. These projects are for the citizens, and I believe that they will provide additional development of municipalities. What we had a few days ago and could hear in the media and the general public is the new public call for airlines. The procedure is open, and for the first time ever, we received 3 airlines that are prepared to apply with new destinations and enter the Macedonian market, whereby they will be able to additionally connect our 2 airports with additional destinations across Europe. And this is a new opportunity, a new chance for the citizens. We have 3 airlines currently. The Commission established is viewing the offers, and in the coming days we are expecting to see the regulation of the existing bids, and we will additionally inform the general public about the new destinations that they can go to from our airports. And I'm convinced that this is a successful policy whereby we most transparently managed to attract more than 1 airline that will apply for the call and be present here to open new opportunities for our citizens. And I'm convinced in success, and I believe that through a lot of hard work and efforts, we'll manage that. The capital projects did not happen last year just by accident. They are a result of a lot of work. The Ministry of Transport and Communications, the Public Enterprise for State Roads, and the Public Enterprise for Railroad Infrastructure, NER, also the Agency for Physical Planning. And I believe that through good coordination we'll manage to make even a greater step in the development of our country. Thank you. The investment cycle in road infrastructure in the past few years reached more than 1 billion euro. The state enterprise for state roads last year ended up with 150 million euro investment in road infrastructure. It can always be better. Now, Director Ristemi, what is the price? Did you accomplish the goals last year, and did you have good quality, pace and manner of operation? Thank you for your question. I'll continue in Albanian. Dear ministers, dear panelists, dear Deputy Prime Minister, dear attendees, thank you for the question. I am honored today to attend this panel where we have an opportunity to discuss and exchange views, provide certain projections and consider the projects while seeing where we were and what we did last year. which was a challenging year. It was a year after a COVID pandemic that caused a health crisis. And then after that, the annexation of Ukraine by Russia started, which caused the economic disturbance and created the economic crisis. All of these challenges touched upon North Macedonia and ourselves as a public enterprise for state roads through an extraordinary engagement of all experts in public enterprises and all the team that received support by the Ministry of Transport and Communications and the government. We managed to make extreme implementation of capital investments amounting to 150 million euro. Basically, what did the public enterprise do in 2022? It built and rehabilitated and reconstructed roads in different directions across the country. We continued with our projects. We also started new projects, but at the same time, we made important preparations for 2023. Without wanting to reiterate the sections mentioned by the minister that were completed in terms of express roads, Kočani to Probishtip and Štip to Radoviš, I wish to underscore the completion of other important projects for regional roads, Karpalak-Žilino, Tolpas-Mateče, and the completion of works on the road that is of great significance to us from Mavrovianovi to Žirovnica. When I'm talking about this, I wish to point out something very important. In close collaboration with the Ministry of Transport, we managed to resolve a lot of infrastructural processes and a number of projects that presented an impediment in the construction of the motorway Kijevo-Ohrid. And nowadays we managed to overcome all of these obstacles, and of this 150 million capital investment for 2022, 1/3 of them was invested precisely in the Kijevo-Ohrid motorway and highway. And we also managed to resolve the supervision, the American and Turkish consortium that is envisaged by a special law to make the corridors 8 and 10. Also, through the public enterprise for maintenance of roads, Macedonian roads, we have rehabilitated 102 kilometers of regional roads, where we invested 11.2 million euro. Also, we prepared and worked on the design of a number of projects to start the construction process in 2023. Thank you, Mr. Rustemi. The State Enterprise for State Roads is one of the drivers of capital investment in road infrastructure. Very briefly, can you single out the capital investments envisaged for the coming 2023 and the coming period? Thank you. I wish to point out that in the program adopted by the government of the Republic of North Macedonia for 2023, 486 million euro has been envisaged that should be allocated to capital investment and infrastructural projects. I also wish to point out that since this year will be remembered as a year in which we will start building 130 kilometers of highways under the supervision and consultant. Very soon we are expecting the negotiations with Bechtel-Enka Consortium. We are expecting to put the foundations and corridor Tetovo Gostivar Dobekocani, then Trebeništa Struga Kjafasan, and corridor 10 that will cover the highway from Bitola to Prilep. We managed to round off the projections. The construction of Kičevo-Dobrčan road funded by the European Bank, and works are continuing in the first 2 kilometers from Skopje to Blace, starting the second phase of highway Skopje-Blace. When I'm saying 2023, I wish to point out another point. This year we are expecting the completion of a number of infrastructure projects and roads, and complete the highway Kičevo-Ohrid by the end of 2023, rehabilitation of 5 very important sections is expected, including Bitola-Međitlija, then Podmolje-Struga-Kjafasan, Skopje-Blace, the regional road connecting Kičelo, Veles and Gradsko, as well as Katlanovo, Veles. All of these sections are expected to be completed by the end of 2023. Also, it's expected to complete the express road Gradsko-Drinovo, Fariš-Drinovo, Kriva Palanka-Devebajer, then the expansion of one of the lanes and the completion of the express road from Rankovce to Kriva Palanka. Therefore, we are saying that we have 1 year to remember in terms of infrastructure investment, since this year is going to be a year where we will improve road infrastructure, since its improvement will enable better economic development and also better livelihood for our citizens in the Republic of North Macedonia. Thank you.
Thank you. As a last panelist for this discussion, for this panel, for the capital projects in our country, we have Professor Goran Markovski, Dean of the Civil Engineering Faculty. The Faculty of Civil Engineering has been, for many years, a highly educational institution that is directly impacting the creation or generation of high educated staff. What do you think, Professor, about the expertise needed for the capital projects that are proposed and implemented by the national institutions? Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the invitation. Distinguished present guests, I'm going to start a little bit further to come to the answer of the question. One of the best Macedonian cardiologists, Dr. Naumovski, who unfortunately is not among us anymore, had a practice to send his patients with additional therapy apart from the medicinal therapy. Namely, his therapy was called 4S, which meant the first S was to use more sport, the second, more sleeping, the third, less salt, and the fourth rule was more sex. In that direction, I have tried. Of course, whoever can do all of them. I have tried in that direction to make also a therapy of 4 S's for our infrastructure. The first S is strategy. The second, standards. The third one is overall scope or scoping. And the fourth is not what you expect. It's the profession. I have an impression that the infrastructure or the capital projects and the politics have started to bother each other, to overlap. The projects are too long, the processes are too long with regards to the mandates, to the political mandates that we have in the country, and this creates nervousness for both sides. We are witnessing that the politics is putting on a sale kilometers or meters of roads without having in mind what is the real condition with these projects. One other thing that we need to change, and we need to inform the public about this, to change the awareness that the capital projects are not starting when the construction machine is going to show up on the terrain, but much earlier with the development of feasibility studies, etc., and projects, etc. This takes time, a lot of time, apart from expertise and knowledge. This takes a lot of time. The processes, regardless of where the finances are coming, whether from the budget of the country, whether from the international financial institutions, are a thing which needs to tell us that we need to change our awareness. It is much better to leave a better project than to have a bad implementation or a bad construction of certain part of our road, for example. I'm hearing that the rehabilitation and reconstruction of certain projects is undervalued. We're in a phase when we can say that this kind of activities are much more important for us than building something new. It is a question what new we need, but we cannot say that the rehabilitation or reconstruction of the existing is not important. On the contrary, we have to take into account that certain road sections do have an alternative. For example, the railway corridor 10 at a larger part of the country does not have any alternative. If we have a problem with one bridge, then we will have a problem to reach the Thessaloniki port. This is a big problem. We have to find a way to have a bypass for all of each of these corridors. Regarding the second S, the standards. Finally, 2.5 years ago, a book of regulation was published that was showing us what are the EU standards for reconstruction. And starting as of 2nd of September this year, it will be obligatory in the projection of all the road infrastructural projects. We had a long period of mixed standardization. For those who wanted to do something, whether it was construction companies or others, they could use this very artfully, I can say, on the damage of the state. In this part, I can say now we have a better and more clear situation. We know that the law on construction is about to be adopted, if I'm not wrong, Minister. Maybe we need to think about two laws. We are talking about construction, but there is a huge difference in the high construction and low construction. We need two laws for these different areas, and we need to think about two different laws. The third S is the administration. It is not easy for the public administration, apart from their everyday duties and obligations and tasks, to also prepare tender documentation, etc. Maybe an independent body or agency should be established. Some of the countries in the region have them. That is going to develop this kind of documents, standard documents, and in this way we are going to take the burden off from the public administration, which is, I can say, not very crafty in the development of this kind of documents. The expropriation might be the biggest problem in the construction area, because in the face of projection, we need, and therefore in the face of projection, we need to go for solutions that may seem more expensive initially, but they will finally be more efficient and less costly. And the function that is not good for the civil engineers, when you're offering intellectual service, to go down, to dump the price for at the bidding is not a good thing. And finally, the profession or the expertise. The infrastructure, apart from the capital investments and apart from creating new values, better livelihood, better connections or better connecting, there is a very important component. It is creating engineering capital. The engineers that are going to be educated and will be able to build our infrastructure investments should be able to do that both in the country and abroad. We should not forget that the civil engineering is one of the rare areas in our country that can give a final product that can be finalized. We don't have many market areas such as this. The civil construction or the building area is the biggest contributor to the net worth on the market in the country, and building this area, improving the knowledge of our engineers, we're going to improve the overall situation. In your addressing regarding the big capital projects and the very important human capital, is our country having appropriate human resources for this? You have mentioned certain standards have been adopted. Are all the capital investments from the technical and human resources viable for realization of these projects? We have met for the first time now, but it turns out like we have agreed upon the questions from previously. Just to answer your question, what kind of human capital we have and what we will have in the future. In the last educational year, we have only had 72 students at the Faculty of Civil Engineering, out of which 9 geodats and 3 geotechnical students. For the second cycle of studies, which is between the 3rd and the 5th year of studies, I will only mention one section or one direction, what the Minister of Environment mentioned, hydrotechnical direction, which is educating engineers that are going to deal with risks from flooding, from wastewater treatment plants or landfills. We do not have any students that have enrolled. This year we have 2 of them, and we are taking care of them as they are our national treasure. We don't want to have them to put them in a situation to leave the country or to leave this faculty. We need to be aware of this. In order to be more specific with giving an answer to your question, I cannot say that we do not have a potential. Maybe for some certain more specific issues we need assistance from a side or from abroad, and we need to practice this, but for the future, which will come very quickly, we need to undertake some serious steps in order to improve the situation. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Markovski.
Почитувани присутни, ги слушнав.
We have heard all the panelists for this panel, for the panel 2, where we discussed and elaborated the capital investments in our country. We are wishing a successful and dedicated work of the institutions and the ministers, and we thereof hope for a successful implementation of the projects and new possibilities and new prosperity for our country. Thank you for all of you and the panelists, and thank you for all the present guests.
Dear attendees, thank you for taking part in this panel, Panel 3, Investment and Economic Development in the Year of Crisis. It will start immediately, so the ones who wish to stay, please remain in the room. Thank you.